"Who's there?" cried the wolf, again disguising his voice. Little Red was hearing the big voice of the wolf was worried. She thought to herself that cold must have made grandmother's voice hoarse. "It is your grandmother, Little Red," the wolf cried out to her, softening his voice as much as he could. "Come in, sweet child." Little Red opened the door and headed straight to her grandmother. As she got close to the bed, she was frightened. Her grandmother didn't even look like herself. The coat had made her eyes look strange, and her nose was several times its normal size. Thinking that her grandmother's ears must also have stopped up, she moved closer and said in a loud voice, "Grandmother, you don't look like yourself. What big eyes you have!" "All the better to see you with, my dear." Thinking her grandmother might not have been able to see her very well, Little Red moved in a little closer. She noticed her grandmother's sweet powder smell was missing. "Grandmother, you don't smell like yourself." "It's the medicine I use for my cold, my dear." Little Red then reached for her grandmother's hand, but the wolf's paw did not feel at all like her grandmother's soft hand. It was rough and coarse. Immediately Little Red let go. She moved in a little closer and surveyed her grandmother's face a little more carefully. "Grandmother, what big ears you have. All the better to hear you with, my dear." "Grandmother, what big teeth you have. All the better to eat you up," growled the wolf as he jumped from the bed and attempted to grab Little Red. Little Red jumped away in the nick of time. Thankfully, the wolf, in his haste, got all tangled up in grandmother's nightgown. He tripped and fell flat on the floor. Bumping his head as he hit the ground, he was knocked out. Little Red pulled out her cell phone from the pocket of her cape and dialed 911. After she told the operator what had happened, she began to look for grandmother. She glanced around the room. Her grandmother was nowhere in sight. She sniffed the air, but there was no hint of grandmother's sweet powder. The only smell of the medicine. Little Red stood still and listened quietly in hopes of hearing her grandmother. What was that? She was sure she heard someone. She used her ears to follow the sound and ended up by grandmother's closet. She opened the door and there was grandmother. Little Red untied her, hugged her, and helped her back to bed. As Little Red watched the animal obedience school officer haul away the wolf into the wagon, she thought to herself, "I sure learned an important lesson today. I will always trust my senses. That wolf did not sound like my grandmother. That wolf did not look like my grandmother. That wolf did not smell like my grandmother. That wolf did not feel like my grandmother. He was an imposter. My senses told me that."